Comfortable then, Barcelona 3, Osasuna 0 is how it finishes. Taking a look at what that means at the top of the table. All the chasing pack, all the title contenders have played the same amount of games now, and it's Barcelona who sit atop the pile on 63 points, 3 clear of Real Madrid, 7 clear now of Atleti. Meanwhile, at the bottom, Osasuna, of course, will have bigger battles ahead of them between now and the end of the season. As it stands, they are 6 clear of the relegation zone. Been a great calendar year, hasn't it, for Barcelona? 19 games, 16 wins, 3 draws, and they've looked comfortable throughout most of those victories as well. And I think it's fair to say they are, without a doubt, favourites to go on and win La Liga. As we welcome in Sid Lowe. Sid, so much talk going into this game about internationals and tiredness and scheduling. In the end, it was a layup.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it? And probably more than we expected. Now, it is true that pre-game we were saying that the form that Osasuna are in, and with tonight it now means just 1 win in 16 games, that we felt they weren't going to be able to put up much of a challenge to Barcelona tonight. They have 4 key players absent as well. But even so, I think the way that Barca moved through this game was probably a little bit of a surprise. Actually, I quite like something that Flick had said in the pre-match press conference yesterday. He said he'd been asking his fitness staff, the physios, the club's medical staff, what to do about this run of games they're going to get now. It's going to be at least 8 in the next 23 days, and then depending, of course, on whether or not they go through the Champions League and whether or not they reach the final of the Copa del Rey, this is going to be a game every 3 days for the rest of the season. And he said, I went to them and I asked them about it, and they said, you know what, boss? The players look in pretty good shape to us.
Yeah, looked fine today, didn't they?
Well, a lot of it, not all, there is obviously a scientific process to how they evaluate the players these days, but a lot of it still is the psyche. If somebody's telling you you're tired, you start thinking about it, and so sometimes that side of it works as well. The players look good, look fresh. Let's just keep going for the time being. One thing this does, though, it makes me look at that table, and we've this has been a 3-horse race for quite some time now. It's getting tougher and tougher to see a window for Atleti, isn't it? I mean, I don't think...
The only argument you can put up is the fact they don't have Champions League football anymore, so therefore they have more rest than the other two.
Yeah, and I think Barca showed us at the end of the first half of the year before the winter break that they did go in this bad run, that they did start slipping down, I think, to third. And the fact that they picked themselves up after the graphic that we showed, their form in this calendar year, they picked themselves up that disappointing end to the first half of the year and have gone again. That was the big question mark. Would that linger into the second half of the season? And I think thus far the answer is an unequivocal no. I just feel when you're in that scenario that Atleti are in, whether you've got less games or not, whether you've got a little bit more rest, the fact is that the ability to have a bad night diminishes. A bad game, a Leganés, a Getafe that we've seen recently. Those sort of diminish. You're probably one of those away from really counting yourself out, so you almost have to be picture perfect. So I think we're close to being a 2-horse race, not quite there yet. Maybe Atleti will do some magic, maybe Barca or Real will fall off. But this was very, very professional against a side, as Sid mentioned, that are struggling. Yes, they were a little bit more of a threat in the second half.
It's easy just to keep things ticking over. You don't have to spend that much time on the training ground. And Hansi Flick has
which we all like,
which is great when you're playing well and you're just kind of making a couple of tweaks during the course of the week. Which Hansi Flick has at no point this season, even earlier in the first half of the season when there were games coming thick and fast with international duty, etc., he never allowed Barcelona to have an excuse. He was always, we'll be fine, we're well rested, when everybody else was making a lot of noise about international call-ups and so. And I've sat here and said, you give players a reason to lose a game, 9 times out of 10, they take it. Hansi Flick has given this team every opportunity to believe that they're unbeatable. And again, given the schedule, he looks at it and says, no problem, we'll cope with it. Exactly the approach that Barcelona will. When you're in this kind of form, it's easy to paint that picture. And momentum, certainly you hope will
an open schedule is a bad thing.
Yeah.
An open schedule means you're having a bad season, you're out of the competitions, and so, what do you want? Do you want to be busy and playing more games because you're in the thick of it, got a chance to win a lot? Or do you want...
You were quite critical of Barcelona despite their win against Atletico. Talking about the space of midfield, the chances they were giving up, the fact that Atleti were in the game as much as they were. Like a performance like today isn't going to change your mind. But they are the team to beat, aren't they?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, they are. And my big question is, and you said touching it before the game and at half-time, we talk about high lines, no matter what team plays it. Is it going to... And by the way, the high line cost them 2 goals in the Atleti game. They were 2-0 down, right? More often than not, you don't come back from that. You can't have Lamine Yamal picking the top corner out all the time and doing these special things. I mean, I know he does a lot. You can't do it every game. And I think the big question will be, come the end of the season, was this productive for them all the way to the end line? Or has it, I'm talking about the defensive line, or has it been exposed, maybe semi-final, final of the Champions League, or final of Copa del Rey, whatever it is, whatever they get, last 2 or 3 games of the season when the pressure is maybe going to be cranked up, the Clásicos in sort of mid-May at the moment, those are the questions that are going to be there, and we'll get the answers. But that is my one criticism at the moment, and the top of the league, and I understand all that, is at the end of the year we'll have to say, do you know what? The risk was worth, the rewards was worth the risk.
Yeah.
Or we'll be saying it was just a bridge too far, and they get caught out in the real big moments. We're going to find those answers out.
What's interesting, Sid, is after that dip in December, they've kind of gone on a bit of a Real Madrid run. We're used to seeing the likes of Real Madrid and in the Premier League, Manchester City, put this sort of run together at exactly the right time of the season, and Barca seem to be doing exactly that.
Yeah, I suppose the question is whether it proves to be exactly the right time of the season.
Right.
Whether they maintain this now till the end, isn't it? But I think you're right. One of the things that's been really interesting about them is that when they had that dip and when they were beaten 3 games in a row at home. Now, those 3 games weren't the same. They weren't beaten in exactly the same way by Leganés, by Las Palmas and by Atletico Madrid. Those 3 games played out slightly differently. There were some shared characteristics, but they did play out differently, I think. I think at the end of that little run, and I include myself in this, I think quite a lot of us felt, I wonder if this is us seeing a reality. I wonder if we'd maybe got a bit too excited a little bit too quickly earlier in the season. And I think their response to that has suggested, actually, no, we haven't. And Craig talking about that high line, I suppose one way of looking at it would be to say, what Craig's talking about, I think there is I suppose, a potential criticism at the end of the season, rather than one that's there now. Because I think some of those lessons they've learned, I think they're not playing quite as high as they were. And also, if you look at the big games, kind of so far at least, it certainly has worked. And I think you're right, that response post-Christmas has been fantastic from them.
And I'll tell you what's kind of refreshing. Compared to, say...
Sid hasn't got a book on high lines, has he? Next to him on his right-hand
lots
side.
of books there.
Success and failure rate of a high line.
Like, we've seen a lot of big clubs play some really mediocre football this season. I'm thinking Arsenal, I'm thinking Chelsea, obviously Manchester City are very much in that conversation as well. With Barcelona, you know you're at least going to be entertained for the 90 minutes.
I think it's safe to say Real Madrid have played some mediocre football.
Yeah, most definitely.
Although they are doing what Real Madrid do and hover around and hang in there and get the cavalry back from injuries and suspension and whatnot, and who knows what's going to be there at the end of the year. It's undeniable. Whatever happens at the end of the year, Hansi Flick has transformed the way that they go about it, the way they play, the pace in their play. He has utilised, and let's not forget, he lost 2 or 3. Was it young Marc Bernal? He lost. He was playing kids early in the season.
Yeah,
Valencia,
at the beginning of the season.
Valencia match day 1. Casado and Bernal in midfield, but young Bernal does his cruciate a couple of games later, or whatever it is. He put his trust in the kids, and that has a reverberation around the rest of the club and the dressing room. Say, look, the manager's, he's not frightened, He's not frightened to put the kids in, and I think there's a real confidence. It seems to me. And again, it's man management. There's a real, from the players looking at the manager and going, we like what he's doing. Right. We like what he's saying. We like his training. We like how he approaches things. We generally like what he says in the press conferences. And players, players sometimes look at that. And I think Hansi Flick and Jurgen Klinsmann, our colleague, has talked about it. The one thing, coaching apart, that Flick has got, according to Jurgen, is he's got great man management skills. And I'm always a great believer in, coaching and tactics is a certain percentage of any professional sport. But if you don't have the people skills to manage these big dressing rooms and superstars, you're absolutely screwed because players will turn against you. And when players turn against you, they do not perform.
And one player who I think you can very much have that conversation about, Sid, is the way in which you felt that Lewandowski and Xavi never really clicked compared to a Lewandowski now under Flick, who's got 36 goals already this season.
Yeah, and I like the way that Flick responds to this. And obviously, he's not really had to in the last couple of months, but at the start of the season, when people were surprised at how well Lewandowski played, Flick's response kept being, well, this is the same Robert that I've known for years. What's the big deal? This is just, Lewandowski doing Lewandowski things. Now, it's true that last year the sense of connection between him and the manager of Xavi wasn't really there. Indeed, part of Xavi's belief that one of the things that Barcelona needed to grasp the nettle on, which was the future of Lewandowski, and whether actually it was time to move him on, whether actually it was time to go for a different forward, was part of what kind of contributed to the breakdown in the relationship with Joan Laporta. And I think one of the things, and this point then leads on to what Shaka was talking about and what Craig was talking about, that idea of confidence. Right from the very start, Flick has had this attitude that says, there are no excuses, we've got good players, we're going to do this and we're going to enjoy it and we're going to play and we're going to go for it. And we're not going to be here kind of grumbling about things. And I think that positive attitude, of course, it only takes you some of the way. If your team's not good enough, you're not going to win the league, however positive you are. But I think that has changed the environment for a handful of players. And I think Robert Lewandowski is a really good example of that. And I think the other really, really good example of it is Pedri in midfield. A player who looks fitter, who looks happier, and seems to be enjoying the game from a slightly deeper position more than he ever has before.
Let's not forget, just briefly, it wasn't only the Lewandowski factor with the relationships last year. You had the other senior player in the middle of the park, in Gundogan, publicly
on more than one occasion,
publicly criticising youngsters, and then criticising Ronald Araujo for his red card in Paris. That festers because we all have when you get young players that come into the side or young players that are in the side, no matter how talented or experienced they are, they make mistakes or they do things. You deal with it. I think, Shaq, you deal with it in-house, in the dressing room. But because it was public, I just felt that added to the festering issue that Xavi had in that dressing room.
Also, speaking of Robert Lewandowski, I remember at one point last season, and I was very critical of him, in one game, I can't remember which game it was, where Lamine Yamal didn't get him the ball and he kind of waved away any approach from Yamal on the park. And I felt Lewandowski, as a senior player, as a leader within this team, given his experience, given the youth of everybody else around him, I thought that was him shirking the bigger picture to his duties. This game's a great example. Great ball by Ferran Torres, but he straight away goes across. And for me, that's the Lewandowski that not just Barcelona needs in terms of finishing off those chances, but those young players need from him. That leadership, that understanding of their roles. And that's when Lewandowski at his best. And when he's at his best, Barcelona, as you see, seem unstoppable.
And it was mentioned in the commentary, I think, that there's a realisation, quite an easy one actually, from the manager, that I don't need Robert Lewandowski to be running about like a headless chicken, chasing the ball. If he does it now and again, fine. But I don't need him dropping in there. I don't need him running the channels so much. I need him, as the manager said, as Hansi Flick said, to do the Lewandowski things, which he's doing for years, which is to be at the right places, to make the right 5 or 10 yards runs, to link the play up. And if you're looking for players at that age, with that experience, to go and chase all over and press, you're probably going to lose them sooner rather than later. And I think that was also, I think there's many reasons that it went a little awry for Xavi. But certainly, when you're alienating senior players like that, it doesn't help.
Barca, of course, with 2 days off now, ahead of their clash against Girona on Sunday. Lazy. Meanwhile, Real Madrid are in action against Leganés. Those games, of course, all live on ESPN+.